What's going on? Welcome to Starting Over for the Last Time. I'm your host, Coach and Kruma, your alignment and identity coach. And on this podcast, what we do is help give you the tools, the knowledge, and the insight to make the next restart your last restart. So, tonight we're going to talk about the concept of motivation is not failing. Um, a lot of times we feel like when we can't get the urge to do something or we can't get something done or we don't see something through that is this live? Okay, we still going. I don't know what's going on here. That we need more motivation. I'm just not motivated. I'm just not motivated. I don't have motivation. I don't have the motivation. And we think that the motivation is failing us, but that idea is what's failing us. It's not the motivation. The motivation is doing its job. We just typically over the past 4 or 5 years, I've been studying physiology and neurobiology. It has been so life changing to understand the systems of the brain and the body, how they function, and how we can utilize them to change everything about our lives from changing our nervous system to rewiring our brain to neuroplasticity to the energy that we put out into the world that we can use to literally attract the things that we want. Like all of this stuff is scientific, but before I started studying it 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't know anything about it. Obviously, you don't know what you don't study. And these things have been using me, using all of us. I'm just putting it on me here from what I study, right? They say we only use 10% of our brains. Now that's a misnomer. So we only consciously use 10% of our brain. That's just our prefrontal cortex, our thinking, our logic, our reasoning, our rationing, our imagination. The other 90% of the brain is using us. So when you learn all of these other systems, you can utilize those systems to make the changes that you need to create the life that you want. When you don't understand those things, life falls apart and we don't know how to put it back together again because we don't know anything about our bodies or what things are supposed to actually do. So we think we need the motivation because that's what we've been told over and over and over again. You just need to be a little bit more motivated. You just need to be a little bit more disciplined. But on this podcast, we are going to help you understand the things that you need to do to actually make this new start your last start. Excuse me. So like I'm saying, most people think they have a motivation problem, but what they really have is a misunderstanding of how change works problem. You think if you can just get this motivation and you can just motivate yourself to do it and you can just be disciplined to do it for the next 6 months, and if you can just, it's not what happens. Think about this, right? If you feel like motivation is what you need, how does motivation in and of itself make you better? It doesn't. Motivation is not what makes you better. It's the work that you do in life that makes you better. It's the changing of your belief systems. It's the changing of your identity. It's the rewiring of your mind. It's the resetting of your nervous system. It's not the motivation. Now, motivation is good. I'm not sitting here saying motivation is bad. Motivation has its role, and we're gonna talk about that. We're going to get into the actual role of motivation so we can stop trying to drag motivation where motivation no longer needs to be. Now, I want to ask you this question. What does motivation look like to you? So, when you are in that funk and you can't get it going and you can't make the change that you want, you can't get to the gym consistently, you can't do whatever that thing is that you desire. When you can't, like, what does motivation look like to you? Well, like literally think about that. All right, if I'm motivated, what does that look like? Now, this is what I want to ask you. What level of motivation do you need to get up and go to work? Now, when you were trying to chase the dream, right? when you were trying to become the best version of yourself, when you were trying to make the biggest change in your life, you felt like you needed this big motivation. But what level of motivation do you need to get up and go to work? Now, I know what people will say. Well, I'm motivated because if I don't work, then I'll end up starving and homeless. Now that's definitely understandable. But do you need an influx of motivation to get you to get up and go to work? Like, do you need that same whatever you think you need to make the big change in your life, whatever that motivation is? Do you need that same exact thing to get up and go to work in the morning? You don't. What you have is a belief in your mind that if I don't go to work, I'm gonna end up homeless and starving. And that belief is what carries you every day to work. It's not that the motivation gets you to work in the morning, it's the structure of your belief system creating that life that says, I got to get up every single morning and go to work. Now, some days we might call out, but you don't need that same motivation. And the reason I want you to think about this is because if you know you don't need whatever idea of motivation you think you need to make the biggest change in your life. I done said that backwards, I think. So let me let me backtrack and get this right. Whatever level of motivation you think you need to make the biggest change in your life, if you don't need that same level of motivation to get up and go to a job you hate, you don't need that same level of motivation to make the big change. Am I making sense? So you think, oh my God, I need this extra energy. I need this spark. But if you don't need that to get up and go work 8 hours, you don't need it for the big change. And I'm not saying that to shame you or drag you. I'm saying that to make you realize that, whoa, if if I can go to work every day, I can make the big change. If I can get up and go to work, I can make the big change because whatever level of motivation I need to get up and go do the bare minimum or maybe even do the most at my job, I think I got that same level of motivation in order for me to start making the big change. So whatever that baseline level of motivation, like we think we need more motivation to make the big change than we do to consistently work a job for 40 years. I would think it takes more motivation to go somewhere where you hate for 40 years than it does to make the big change of something that you love and something that's supposed to take you to where you're inspiring to go. So let's think about this. Motivation is an emotional spike, not a structure. So we got to get into this to understand motivation. An emotional spike is a temporary surge of energy created by some kind of emotion, novelty, urgency, fear, inspiration, or some kind of pain. The reason you can't create a structure for change, because the structure is what makes the change. The reason you can't make a structure for change to happen is because you're not looking to change your beliefs or your identity. You're looking for a feeling. That's why we say, I don't feel motivated. You're not trying to create any of the structures that are necessary to create the dream life you want, or the dream personality you want, or to attract the dream mate that you want, or to get the dream job that you want, or to start the dream business that you want. You're looking for a feeling. Every day you're just waking up like, it's not there. I probably just look crazy. You just wake up trying to feel it. It's not there. And if you don't feel whatever this energy is, then you can't do anything. But there's a baseline of what you, if you can go do whatever that job is, you can do some task for your dream. If you don't need to feel that energy, listen, we getting up, we drinking monsters, we drinking Celsius, we drinking coffee, we doing all kind of stuff to just get us up to get to this job. And then when we get to the job, we do all the tasks that are necessary for us, but we don't do the task that is necessary for the biggest change that we desire to have in life. You know what? You don't feel motivated. Go drink some coffee, go drink a Monster, go drink a Celsius, and go attack your dream the same way you go to your job. We got to stop. We got to stop looking. Got to stop looking for that feeling because the emotional spike is going to fall down. The motivation is going to fade. The motivation is going to what going to go away. But what's going to be there after the motivation fades, and that's where we need the structure. Now, what's crazy is people always create these structures when something bad happens. I see all the time on social media, and ladies, I'm not trying to come at you or anything. I see all the time these women who just aren't their best selves when they're in relationships. And they're making these videos showing themselves looking like they're not their best selves. And this is like the one he cheated on, the one he didn't respect, the one he couldn't love properly, the one, and then they show a new picture of them, the best versions of themselves, and like this is the one he fumbled. No, 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 he didn't fumble because he didn't fumble her because you weren't her. But after the breakup, you didn't need the motivation. You created a structure. Now, the breakup might have motivated you, but then you created a structure of life. Like, you know what? I gotta be better. And I hate that for some reason, ladies, y'all can't do that while you're in a relationship. You know, I don't know. I don't know. He's not getting you. I don't. I'm not here to drag. I'm just giving an example. I'm just giving an example. Let's talk about something different. Somebody might lose a loved one. You know, you ever see somebody who's, you know, just doing their thing, but they always keep talking about, man, you know, life is short. They done lost somebody they love, and once they lost somebody they love, they like, you know what? Then they create a structure to make life different. Or let's say somebody is overweight, or not even just overweight. They're just their body is sick, and they get to the doctor, and the doctor tell them you need to change your eating habits. They go ahead and create a whole new structure to change their life because they found out that if they continue eating the way they eat, that they're going to cut 10, 20, 15, 10, 20, 30 years off their life. Now, think about that, right? They don't even be motivated. They be mad about, oh, I gotta eat this nasty. I gotta eat. I wish I had. There's no motivation at all. Structure. So the motivation is just that emotional spike. It's not a structure. And in order to create that lasting change, we got to get away from trying to get have this feeling, to have this spike, to have this inspiration, and we have to have structure. So now this is the thing, right? Emotional spikes can get the ball rolling, but they don't keep it rolling. Excuse me. And that's why we tend to keep looking for motivation, because we know the motivation is what got us started. But what gets you started isn't what gets you to the finish line. So we think, oh, I was motivated and that's what got me going. And now once I'm rolling, I just got to keep finding this motivation to keep. Nah, the motivation's only job was to get you going. The motivation's only job was to get you spiked and to get you moving. But once you're moving, you have to have some structure in your life that's going to continuously take you to where you're trying to go. Now, emotional spikes, they come from, and this is like we got to start understanding the body. Emotional spikes come from stress hormones and neurotransmitters that heighten your focus and your urgency. It's like your fight or flight being activated, right? Literally, when your fight or flight is activated, nothing in your body that is not aiding in helping you survive is working. You're not digesting any food, like nothing in your body is going on that's normally going. Once you're in that fight or flight, everything in your body says we either have to run for our lives or we have to fight for our lives. And all that other stuff you don't need. But this is the thing. Or this is the question. This is the question. Who are you when you aren't excited? Who are you when you aren't excited? When you done watched a movie, you done listened to a podcast, a speech, you done had somebody give you an encouraging word, you done heard a good word at the church, and you got excited. And when you're excited, you're ready to take over the world. But who are you when you're not excited? The moment the excitement fades off, you lose all desire, you lose all hope, you lose all ambition. That's the real you. The motivated you is not you. The excited you is not you. You are who you are when you're not excited. And physiologically, the nervous system always returns to your baseline. So it's not your motivation that's keeping you back. It's the person you are when you're not motivated that is. It's that identity that's holding you back. It's your beliefs about yourself. It's the story you tell yourself about yourself. It's the story about yourself that you believe about yourself. That is that self image. And whatever that self image is, whatever those beliefs are going to produce results conducive to what they are. So you have to start telling yourself a different story about you. You have to believe a different story about you. Once you believe a different story about you and you have changed who you are, you have changed your identity, that's when things in life change. So motivation is like the gun being shot at a race. After the gun is shot, not only do you have to do some running, you have to be a runner. You have to be a runner. Because if you ain't no runner and you try to get out there and run that 100, you might fall out after 20 because you're not a runner. You ain't been doing no running. You haven't been doing any working out. You haven't been practicing running. None of that. You're motivated to get up and go, but when the gun goes off, that's the motivation. Boom, you can't run because you're not a runner. That's why the work is all around identity. You got to change who you are. Even with professional runners, you might see somebody, they doing a 4x4 relay. So they had four people, they running 400 meters. But oftentimes it's somebody that's on the team that doesn't typically run the 400 meters. They might run the 100 or the 200. And running the 400 is totally different than running the 100 and the 200. And you'll hear the announcer say, well, let's see what this person does because they're not a 400 runner. That's identity. They're not a 400 runner. And when you talk to them, they'll say it. Nah, I'm a 100 run. I'm a 100 sprinter. I'm a 200. I don't do the 400. I am not that. That's see how that's the story they believe about themselves. Even a professional runner, if they don't do the 400 all of the time, it don't matter how motivated they are. They're like, I'm not a 400 runner. That is not my identity. What story have you believed about yourself that's keeping you from running after the gun goes off? What story about yourself are you believing that's keeping you from running after the gun goes off? The gun is the spike. But if you want lasting change, it's not the motivation that you need. Motivation is not failing you. You are failing the motivation. The motivation that got you going, and then you imagine motivation was like a spirit that can hit you, right? And it falls on you, it gets you excited, it gets you moving, does its job, and it moves on. And now, while it's moving on, it hear you like, I ain't motivated. Whoa, I did my job. I did my job. I got you up. I got you out. I got you moving. It's not me that's failing. You're failing me. I did my job to the T, but you didn't have a structure. So let's talk about structure. A structure is something that holds behavior in place even when emotion is gone. So, what are the structures? Structures are your identity, your environment, your nervous system patterns, your daily defaults, and your internal rules that your body believes are true. So, your identity, again, the story that you tell yourself about yourself. Your environment is what reinforces the story. So if you were telling yourself you are a product of your environment, then the environment is going to mirror what you believe, and that's all you're going to be. I'm just like people from where I'm from, or people in my family. We got this story, and then we live in these environments, or we make sure we stay in these environments because nobody has to stay in any environment. You can. I don't care if your home life is terrible. You can go be at the library all day. You can find somewhere positive to go that's going to reinforce the identity that you need to live the life that you want. But are you going in those environments, or are you staying in environments that reinforce who you are now, living the life you don't want to live? It's the structure that you got to build. Your nervous system patterns. What Now, this also goes into the internal rules about your body, but what does your body believe is safe? Your nervous system. Does every time you think about doing something big, do you get anxious? That's your nervous system saying, I don't know nothing about all this big stuff. We've been small all our lives. We got to reset and retrain our nervous system. Daily defaults. What do you just default to when you're not thinking? When you're not being intentional, what you just fall to? You just fall to just watching TV. Are you watching Love and Hip Hop? You watching baddies? You watching things that aren't going to increase your mind? You watching things that might even kill a couple of brain cells? Do you default back to smoking or drinking? Like, do you just default back to something that's not going? I always ask this question: is the life you're living leading you to the life that you want? If I look at your life, right? If I see a kid who's the science, who's into science, a kid, he goes to science events, he goes to science fairs, he reads science books, everything about the boy. Every boy is doing something, or the girl, they're doing something that has to do with science. You've been watching kids 6 years old. They're 12 years old now. They're still doing everything science. What you think that kid's going to do when they're grown? You're going to think they're going to do something about science. Why? Because that's where life is leading them. Now, if I watch you for 6 years, if I watch you for 6 years and I see what you do, what am I going to deduce that you are going to be in the future? The defaults that we have to change. Now, the internal rules your body believes are true. What do they believe that you're not safe when you're trying to move on? Does your body think that you're always going to get rejected? Does your body think that nobody's going to take you serious? Does your body live in imposter syndrome? What are the rules your body believes are true? Those are the things you have to change in order to create the structure. Now, why motivation always fades after that emotional high? Because again, we're trying to get that feeling. We're trying to get that feeling. It's like it's like people in some of them churches where they're trying to get the Holy Ghost. You just gotta say stuff until the Holy Ghost fall on you. You're trying to get the feeling. You're trying to get the feeling. But why does motivation always fade? And this is when people are always talking about motivation, this is what they don't tell you. That motivation is going to fade. Not sometimes, all of the time. Motivation is going to always. And the reason why it fades is because And it's not because you don't want it bad enough. Like let's like back up, right? Because I don't want you to be like judging yourself, shaming yourself, right? So it's not because you didn't want it bad enough. It's not because you're not talented enough. It's not because you're not disciplined enough. It's just that motivation comes from emotion, and emotion is chemistry, and chemistry is temporary. Your body literally cannot, it is not healthy for your body to stay in an elevated state forever. That's why so many people are dealing with anxiety and depression because their body is in fight or flight at all. And they're never coming down to their baseline. They're always afraid, and their body always feels like their life is in danger. And that's why so many people are dealing with anxiety. Now, I know it's probably a byproduct of the way capitalism is in this country and everything, and the ideals of America, and nowadays Trump and ICE, and so people are on high alert all the time, but that's not healthy for your body. It's not healthy for your body. You're supposed to spike to your normal, be at your normal for a long time, spike and come back down to your normal, and be at your normal for a long time. One of the examples I always use is deer. Right, a deer. See, animals don't have the same kind of imagination that we have, so we can imagine threat and then get anxiety about the imagined threat. So I know we done all thought about the worst case scenario, and then the worst case scenario of the worst case scenario, and then the worst case scenario of the worst case scenario's worst case scenario, and now we sad, and none of that was even real. So we imagine ourselves, but our anxiety is typically about things that we're just imagining. The deer does not have that. The deer goes down to the water. A lion chases the deer. The deer runs for its life. Spike, heightened senses. The deer takes off running for its life. Gets away from the lion. Just later, you know what the deer doing? Right back at the water like nothing happened. Not us. Let a lion, let a lion chase us from the water. We ain't never going to the water again. Oh, we're gonna keep we're gonna have nightmares about the lion. We're gonna be thinking about the lion showing up at places where the lion ain't supposed to show up. We're gonna have anxiety about that. But the deer had its spike back to normal. It went right back to the water. It's that baseline. That baseline is what we have to have. We have to increase that baseline. So the problem is when motivation fades, instead of people saying, okay, all right, that makes sense. Motivation wasn't supposed to last forever. What they say is, well, we all been, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just get motivated? Why can't I get it going? Why don't I feel it? And it's because you thought you need motivation to keep going. Story. See, everything goes back to a story you tell yourself. This the story you've been telling yourself. I need motivation to keep going. No, that's not what you need. You need motivation to start. You need structure to keep going. So what people begin to believe is that motivation disappearing means that their goal was fake, or that their desire wasn't real, or that they're just inconsistent. No, motivation is the movement, but movement isn't maintenance. Motivation is the movement, but isn't maintenance. And movement and maintenance are two different things. Now, you think your motivation failed you when really you fail your motivation by not having something set up to take over after the motivation fades off, or after the motivation has done its job. So you start thinking all these negative things about yourself, all because you had the incorrect belief. And every day you're that you don't need. You're trying to find this spark when the spark is gone. It's like a car, the battery, the spark plugs, they spark to turn the car off. I mean, turn the car on. You can literally, well, I don't know about some of these newer cars because they're so crazy now, but at least in the older cars that I used to work on, you could take the battery out and keep driving the car. The battery was just spark. The alternator controls the car. You could drive the car all around all day long until you couldn't turn it off and turn it back on though. But you can, as long as it's already on, you can turn it. You can drive on that alternator until that alternator dies. The battery, it was only there for the spark. That's the motivation. What's your alternator? Now, when people are so focused on motivation, they lose the motivation and then they can't get it done. They start to feel broken. They start to feel down. They start to feel less than. They start to feel weak. So this is why people feel broken when motivation disappears. This is where the damage really happens to us when we don't understand. When motivation fades, people don't just stop, they judge themselves. I always do this. Why can't I stay consistent? I'm never consistent. And I was doing good, but that self-talk is more destructive than anything because what? That's it's the story that you tell yourself about you. So now the story says this is what you always do. So guess what you're going to do? What you always do. The story you just told yourself is you can't stay consistent. So guess what you're going to do? Be inconsistent. The story you told yourself was I never finish things. And guess what? That's what you're going to do. And that bleeds into your identity. And guess what that creates? Structure. It creates a structure that prevents you from getting or being what you want. Whatever story you keep telling yourself, and one of those stories is you need to be motivated. You got to get that. What I want you to do tonight is get that story out of your mind. You don't need to be motivated. That's not what you're missing. Your motivation is not failing you. Your lack of structure is failing you. So what I want you to understand is that you're not failing just because your motivation fades. You're not failing because your motivation fades. And that's what we tend to think. When you don't feel motivated enough and you believe you need motivation to make the change and you're not making the change and you're staying the same and you keep restarting next Monday, next month, next year, this time and you keep starting over and you never accomplish shit. You are a failure when you don't feel motivated when the thing to know that motivation was supposed to be connected. It's supposed to be connected to the structure. And now when I build this structure, once I get motivated again, I get moving. And then once I get moving, the motivation latches onto the structure. And now the structure goal. So you're not failing with a motivation phase. Your body is just returning to your baseline. Your identity is just oozing through now the story that you've told yourself about yourself. Your environment hasn't changed, so you didn't create that structure, and what your body believes about you is still the same. So your system just defaults back to what's familiar, and it's time for you to us. I like to say us. It's time for us to create a new familiar. Time for us to create a new familiar. So let's see what. Okay, all right. So now we start seeing ourselves as failure, right? We start seeing ourselves as weak, as less than somebody that needs this, needs discipline, needs that. And since we don't understand, we don't see what's going on in our lives as information for us to take to use to become better the next time. Let's talk about boxers, right? You know, a boxer might go. Sometimes there's like three fights between two fighters, right? And typically, when there's three fights, that's because the second fight, the fight lost the second fight. But if I beat you up one time, why can't I beat you up again? Well, because that person went back and information and studied how they lost, and then they came back and won the second fight, and now we're going to fight the tiebreaker. We're going to fight the third fight. The reason we keep getting our asses kicked is because we're not taking everything as information. We're taking everything as a character attack. Everything that happened wrong, we think we're wrong. We think we're bad. We think we're less than, instead of just saying, "Oh, that's what happened. Okay, this is how I counter it." But no, you think it's something wrong with you and your character, all because everybody told you need to be motivated. Listen, people don't even know what they're talking about. People don't be knowing what they're talking about. So now what you're doing is personalizing a biological process. This is literally your nervous system. You're turning the chemistry of your body into your character, and then over time, the shame becomes heavier and heavier. And then you just stop trusting yourself. Not not because you failed once, but because when you failed, you interpreted it as you are a failure. It's okay to fail. It's okay to get it wrong, but it's not okay to interpret it as you are a failure. Once you feel like that, every restart adds more pressure. Every restart adds more doubt. Every restart makes the next attempt feel heavier. And then, since we already have this negative bias, then we want to have we create self-fulfilling prophecies, and then we don't give our all. So you don't give yourself 100%. And then when you don't give your 100%, you don't see 100% return. And then you say, see, I knew I was never gonna, I knew I was never gonna. And then eventually you just stop trying. You just give up and you just live a mundane life. But I don't want you to live a mundane life. I want you to live the best life that you can. So, what does permanent change actually require? If motivation isn't the answer, then what is? Like I was saying all night, that's structure. Structure is what carries behavior when the emotion is gone. Structure is what gets you up on days when you're not inspired. Every day you get up and go to work, your structure, your routine ain't got nothing to do with motivation. Structure is what keeps you aligned when you're bored, when you're tired, or when you're neutral. Structure is what makes consistency feel normal instead of some heroic act or this heroic feeling. And structure isn't just schedules and planners or to-do lists. Real structure lives in the depths. It lives in, what are we talking about? Identity, environment, nervous system, daily defaults, and internal rules your body believes are true. So here's the key shift. When something is a part of your identity, it doesn't require motivation. It's just who you are, is what you're going to get up, what's what you're going to do. So when you make that change in the identity, you don't need to be motivated. You actually default to doing what you need to do. There was a time where I didn't read. Once I knew I needed to learn to be better, the more I read, the more I had the desire to read. And now this isn't half of my books. I got boxes and boxes of books. Then I became an author. I started writing books, and I've written 9 books. In fact, got a new book out right now, Killing Yesterday. If you want to start over for the last time, go to killingyesterday.com and pick up your copy of Killing Yesterday, Creating a New Day for a New You. This is the beginning right here. This book will give you all of the tools that you need to start over for the last time. But back here, you don't need motivation to do if your identity is attached to something. So once you start changing that identity, which means changing that self-talk, which means changing the story. I'm gonna do a whole class on this, which means changing the story about yourself that you tell yourself. Just remember that. Your identity is the story about you that you tell you. So once you start telling yourself a different story, you create a different identity. So you don't get motivated just to do those things. You just do it just because That's who you are. You don't gotta hype yourself up. You're just in alignment with that thing. That's why you don't need motivation to get up and go to work. You don't need motivation to brush your teeth. You don't need motivation to do all the things that you're doing already every day, because you are doing things every day, all day. You don't need no motivation to pick up your phone and scroll TikTok. You don't need no motivation to watch YouTube. You don't need no motivation to do any of the things that you do. Then why do you think you need so much motivation to do the big thing? Motivation is not failing you. You are failing motivation. So that's the key tonight. Motivation is the spark, but you need the structure. You need the structure. You need to change that identity. You need to change that environment. You need to reset that nervous system, retrain it, and you need to retrain what your body believes about you. These lights got me sweating like crazy. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you. We're going to keep this thing going. We're going to be live again on Monday, but you can listen to this everywhere podcasts are displayed. So if you're listening right now, a new one will be uploaded next Monday. But again, go to killingyesterday.com. Make sure you pick up a copy of my newest book, Killing Yesterday, Creating a New Day for a New You. If you want to know how to create that structure that you need after the motivation, that book is going to give you all of the tools that you need. Thank y'all for tuning in. I'll see y'all next week.